This computer. Okay, welcome to the Infinite podcast. This is a full moon podcast. So, we're all very happy to be able to come together here and have this discussion on, a more spiritual night than most nights. So it's a super full moon. It is the flower moon. And, I guess the definition of a supermoon is it's actually bigger in size. Like the sun and the moon, they are pretty much identical in size. And they say that's the only planet so far in the cosmos that they've found that property. And, fact check me if I'm wrong, but it's the only planet where the sun and the moon appear the exact same size, unless it's a supermoon where the moon is bigger and brighter. Now, I have been...
And when you say the same size, just to clarify, right? When you say the same size, we're only talking the same size by perception of us on Earth. Because, of course, we know the sun is millions, if not billions of times larger than Earth, let alone the moon. But in terms of proximity of where the Earth lies in lineage with the moon and where the sun's distance lies in, they appear to be identical. And that's why we get
and that is such
an eclipse where they can cover each other.
Exactly. And when you talk about just a random thing, like how likely is that to occur? It is so unlikely. But then again, we're on a planet that's tilted 23.5 degrees spinning around around the sun. But the point was that the supermoon is bigger and brighter. And over the years, I've been tracking the supermoon and how it affects me. And I've noticed that it changes my behavior and my sleep patterns. For instance, on Tuesday night, I couldn't get to bed. Neither could my wife. I know my mother called me and told me she had a hard time sleeping that night. Didn't even ask her about it. And sometimes during the moons, I get waves of creativity where I stay up all night and I end up coming up with something amazing. Or it can even have, for me, like a negative, unfortunately, vibe where I get into a little bit of a funk. But just wanted your opinion on it. Have you felt any effects of full moons, in your life?
Yeah, today, it definitely was affecting things, both from an electronic standpoint as well as an emotional standpoint. So I know my father-in-law was having some issues with internet and some technological stuff. And just today, I was having to jump on a conference call around 2:30, and around 2 o'clock, all of a sudden, my Wi-Fi just crapped out. And my laptop wasn't picking up any of the networks. My phone was still, because I checked WhatsApp and LinkedIn and saw that it was still working on my phone, but on the laptop it wasn't. And I really then had to reset it. I had to hook it up to an Ethernet cable and access it again so that I could gain those. So on the technological standpoint, I experienced that today. I actually then had a frustration of sorts. Partly it was tied into that. But maybe I was even a little bit short with my son, trying to feed him because he's a little bit sensitive these days, just on some medication right now. So for me, I was getting a little bit my anger is probably my greatest flaw that I have to work on, and I know I have to work on that. It was magnified more so today. That's my experience with it.
That's the turn it can take. And who knows, by the end of the night, it might take a different turn. You know what I mean? It can be very jagged. But, sometimes I actually experience waves of pleasure if I really tune in to it. You know what I mean? And I can feel like this bliss in my body. But, Iron Machete, what's your opinion on moons? Are they spiritual? Can they affect our bodies and our mind?
Well, we do have those tales of werewolves and creatures of the night because of the moon. When there's a full moon, the freaks come out. Apparently, people start acting a bit different. The crime rate kind of slightly goes up a bit. Is there something spiritual about the moon? Well, there's water in our body, and apparently the moon affects water. It creates tides.
Yep.
So it probably has an effect in our body. Spiritually speaking, Depends how you define spirituality, how far you want to go with it. I don't know. It's hard to say. I know it has a physical effect. For sure, it has a physical effect. And if it has a physical effect, then it can affect you spiritually too.
Have you felt anything?
I haven't really studied the moon too much. I just looked into it a bit today when you talked about the podcast.
Fair enough. That's fair enough.
I think Kurt brought up a good point though about our body being 70% or so liquid, and the Earth is the same, which is another interesting commonality between the Earth and its children. And what is the water on Earth tied to? It's tied to the moon and the tidal forces that, of course, are bringing. It's like this glass of lovely Malbec, right? It gets brought one way, it gets brought the other way, depending on the axis of the tilt of the Earth, and in correlation with the moon's positioning throughout the seasons. So, and of course the sun, and people don't always realize this, but same with Jupiter. I always give a shout out to Jupiter because they're our big brother that shields us from a lot of interplanetary debris. And people don't always realize the gravitational effects that Jupiter has as far out as it is. It just holds such a massive grasp on the solar system and it's specifically Earth.
Yeah, I know the Vedic astrologers are all over that. You know, Jupiter was very present here. It's been a kind of a crappy start to 2020 altogether.
You think the moon affects your emotions then? Because you know how if you're feeling good, you feel happy. Like if you feel a bit more, you know, light on your feet, you're a bit more energetic and you feel a bit more, you know, blissful. Where if you feel heavy, your body's sluggish, then you're tired, you're kind of like maybe depressed and sad. So maybe the moon, do you guys think it plays with our emotions? If it has a physical effect, then it has an effect on the emotions?
I think so. I'm not sure if it affects women stronger than it affects men. I know that like spiritually, the moon has always been tied to women. You know, the moon has like this cycle that it goes through, you know, and the sun, and the sun has this, you know, fiery kind of, you know, properties, and that's kind of like the male. But just want to switch topics now. We're just going through kind of some current events there. And, you know, a big topic right now and is, you know, the Chicago Bulls Last Dance on Netflix. And we went through the Jordan era there. And, you know, we saw the Chicago Bulls firsthand, and now we're getting to relive it on like this, you know, sports entertainment documentary. And it's been, you know, probably the hottest show on, you know, TV or streaming services so far. So I guess, you know, my question is, have you seen the documentary? And if you have, what do you think of it?
I've seen it, and I think it's awesome. I mean, I was all over the Bulls back then during that time, the time periods they show on the show when they were winning the two repeats. And I was a huge fan back then, and I remember those days. Those days were awesome, and Jordan was like Superman. And this show goes behind the scenes where cameramen are allowed, like in the dressing room, in the locker room, like they documented a lot of stuff, and there was a lot of stuff said, and like how they showed Phil Jackson, how they showed Michael Jordan, Rodman, and Pippen. Pippen was pretty huge, and they talked about the Detroit Pistons and stuff like that. Kobe Bryant was mentioned. This show is like the #1 show on Netflix right now. I think it's probably the best sports documentary right now so far.
I think it was more watched than Tiger King, is what the article said.
I was like, this guy's a homosexual, he's into tigers. I'm like, that doesn't sound like Mike Tyson. That sounds like Siegfried and Roy.
Mike, the Dreamcatcher, how about yourself? Have you caught an episode of The Last Dance?
Yeah, we were watching a little bit of it. I mean, we don't get a lot of time when you have a young baby. So if we get 35, 40 minutes, maybe an hour, we'll typically dive into something. I'm not a big documentary person.
Yeah.
I've seen very few documentaries, whereas my brother is all about documentaries. However, watching The Last Dance, to Machete's point, it's nostalgic, and it brings that back, that feeling. I was a Bulls fan, and not just a bandwagon Bulls fan. I didn't even really like basketball in the mid 80s, but I liked Michael Jordan in 84, 85. I would only been like 4 or 5 years old, but I didn't like basketball, but I liked Michael Jordan. And Michael Jordan was my gateway into then liking basketball more, and then starting to play basketball, and actually then, you know, getting to play with Machete, and he was the big Bulls fan. And it's just so interesting how the documentary isn't done in chronological order. It
Yeah.
pulls you back from early days in the 80s to some times where now they're starting to get their groove together to winning championships, in the early 90s, overcoming the Pistons after losing to the Pistons, and then, you know, getting that first dynasty in the first three-peat, and now into the, of course, the latter three-peat, which is moving towards what The
Yeah. No,
Last
it's
Dance
kind of a
is.
cool way to do it. It's
Yeah,
simultaneous.
it's great. Very well done. I love the fact that they, of course, got everyone involved in terms of, you got to have Michael involved, but having Scotty, having Phil, having BJ, having Steve Kerr, and then also having some presidents like, you know, Bill Clinton and Barack Obama coming on and dropping a little something. Well, and I think if there was ever an example of the infinite, Michael Jordan is it.
Right.
Michael Jordan is the epitome of what hard work, dedication, perseverance, of course, raw talent as well. But as you've seen, if you've seen the documentary, he wasn't always the greatest. He had to go back and go through his growing pains to get to where he was, but he put in that dedication, and he really showed people, especially like young Black people in America, that they could aspire to something greater. And I think that as a motivational tool in itself makes him the greatest of all time, let alone all of the accolades that came along with it. He changed basketball. He changed basketball from a
he brought it
regional
up.
sport, from a regional sport to a national sport to an international sport to a global phenomenon.
With his McDonald's commercial and then Nike, like,
For sure.
They took it to another level, 100%.
I'm surprised they haven't shown the commercial with him and Michael Jackson. Did they not have a commercial where Michael was playing?
No, that was actually a song off of the Black and White album
Oh, it
called
was a
Jam.
song, yeah.
And the song was Jam, Michael Jackson playing basketball with Michael Jordan, the two MJs hooking up. But it was an interesting thing too, and not to get too political, this does happen a lot. And without getting too racially suggestive, it happens though to Black people. And the opposite side try to bring the Black man down. My dad would always say this, and throughout history, it's very true. Whether it was Muhammad Ali and trying to put him off to go to war and then try to take away his title. We saw it with the Jackson 5. We saw it with Michael Jackson. We saw it with Michael Jordan when they're trying to bring it down on his gambling. And they don't talk about it much in the documentary, but his family stuff.
Not big of a deal. I mean,
Tupac. Exactly, but Tupac, like, believe me, it's not like Oprah Winfrey, Tiger Woods. Like, I could go on. The list of people and especially of African Americans in the United States getting kind of attacked because they've reached so much levels of superstardom. And it's not to say it doesn't happen against other races, but it definitely happens a lot for a lot of African Americans and Black folk who get to that really existential level.
The rise and fall story. Yeah, the media just loves that, you know, and they like to create the fall. But, you know, you touched on it earlier, and we might as well just get into it, is, you know, that who would be more infinite than the Bulls? And that is, you know, a great segue into kind of some of the, you know, deeper topics here. And I was thinking about, you know, what makes the Bulls so good. And, you know, I even saw a clip of now Tyson is training to get back into the ring, and he looked
Yeah.
pretty wicked. You know, not
That's
sure what's
right.
going to happen there, but he was another guy who was able to get Infinite, and you know, was kind of having a discussion on kind of the Brahman and Brahman podcast, and we're
Yeah.
talking about the Infinite.
Shouts out to the bro man.
Yeah, the bro man. Yeah, no, he's got some awesome views. Our podcast, actually, we're doing that tomorrow, and it comes out on Sunday. So if you're looking for a new school spiritual Sunday, tune into the Brahman and Broman podcast, and we got that covered for you. So as I was saying, talking about Jordan, talking about Mike Tyson, they were able to operate on what I call the infinite dimension, and some people call it being in the zone, but this dimension, this state that you can get yourself in, is literally where you have now removed yourself as the obstacle. They say, you know, I'm your worst enemy. I am my own worst enemy. And in this infinite state, basically, you're just being or doing. There is no thinking. So normally we have like this thought process going on in our mind, but you know, when you're performing at that high level as a Jordan or a Tyson, literally, like they say, oh, he's unconscious. Like he is unconscious. Like he's no longer thinking. He's just operating. He's on like a whole different level of the mind where
He's on a
like
subconscious level.
conscious thought is no longer necessary. And now he's just operating. I call it the infinite dimension. And I say, if we can live in the infinite dimension, we can be successful at anything that we do. Our only obstacle is ourselves, you know, where, oh, now you start thinking about it, you psych yourself out. Whereas before you had it mastered. So, you know, my question is, have you ever been in the infinite dimension? And what can you add to that state of mind? You know, Dreamcatcher.
Yeah, Mike Tyson definitely is someone who lived in the infinite, and I think power to him if he wants to give it another go. I mean, look, Randy Couture, UFC fighter, he was fighting into his mid 40s. You look at Mr. Hockey himself, Gordie Howe, he was playing into his late 40s. I think at 48, 49, he was playing for the Hartford Whalers, still being able to give it a go and get the Gordie Howe hat trick of a goal and assist in a fight. So there's no limit to what you can do if you really are going to put your mind to it. And when it comes to now the infinite and tapping into it, I mean, Mike Tyson's Punch Out, that video game was showing when you got into that zone, you were in an autonomic punching frenzy. You weren't thinking about it, right? And I think when Mike Tyson was knocking people out in those first 3 rounds all the time, he was in a zone. The way Michael Jordan gets in that zone, the way that Michael Jackson would get in that zone on stage, I think when you look at it, you said it best, Raj. We are our worst enemy, and we are also our best friend. And it's when we can tap into being our best friend and understanding the power that lies within us, and shedding the self-doubt, shedding the negative connotations. Can't be too hard on ourselves. And there's times in my life, definitely from a sports side of it, where I would go from one side of the soccer pitch to the next, go like Maradona style and score a goal. I didn't second guess my choice of should I have passed it or should I have dribbled left or right. I just flowed with it. There was times when I was on stage, and I remember just being on stage with cannabis, and to me at that point I had reached a pinnacle of my career. I had manifested connecting with my mentor, my idol, and not only getting to do music with him, but to perform with him. And in that moment, it was timeless. It went by like a dream. And
It was
when you
infinite.
have it was infinite. It was so deep. It was bottomless. And when you have those moments, you just have to get out the way. And I think sometimes critical thinking and logic, they are appropriate and applicable in mathematics and algebraic equations and levels of science, of course. But sometimes they just get in the way of you being able to create and use your imagination and use your intuition.
Yes.
Sometimes you have to just trust in the gut and trust in your ability, have faith in what you don't quite know, and see it. And I think that's what's really being in the zone is all about, is having that trust and faith in yourself that I'm going to hit this shot, I'm going to hit that note, I'm going to make that right decision. But yeah, there's a couple that I would hit it. I wish I could tap into it more. I'll say this final thing.
Yeah.
I thought about it today during this whole episode of the moon fiasco of mine, when I was really not in my best self. And my greatest weakness is anger, and anger stems from emotion. Now, emotion is great, things like passion, but passion can blind you. I remember running a business in the mid 2000s amongst the crisis, which maybe had a part to play in it. But I was so passionate about what I was doing and the people I was touching in the nutritional world that I was blind to some of the market drops and the struggles and tribulations that perhaps I couldn't quite see yet or was blind to. And so that's the one thing about passion is passion is great, emotion is great, even positive passion emotion, but it can still blind you sometimes. And sometimes you have to be aware and trust in the instinct, not just the passion behind it.
Yes. The natural instinct that we're all born with, the natural intelligence that we all have, you know, call it a divine intelligence, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Machete, infinite dimension.
Well, my world is basically, if I think of the cosmic mind or the flow or the infinite dimension, what have you, I think about jiu-jitsu, and that's like my world. And when you roll, when you train, when you spar with someone, like you're automatically put in that moment where you have to be in the zone. It's like you have no choice. It's like it's thrusted upon you. So now you have to like find a way to flow out of the situation. At first, you're going to be stuck. You're going to be like trying to think of all the ways you can get out. You're trying a bunch of stuff, like you're trying these new techniques and stuff. Eventually, in time, you get with it and you put the pieces together, and then you start flowing more. And then with that, you are unconscious, right? Like you're not really thinking about the next move to do. It's automatically you're on top of it.
Yeah.
Because in jiu-jitsu, if you think, then you're late, and if
You
you're
might get
late,
caught.
strength. If you use strength, if you think you're late, and if you're late, you use strength, and if you use strength, you tire, and when you tire, you die. That's like an saying by some guy named Sal Rivero in jiu-jitsu. And I think that saying is awesome because when you do roll with someone and you make a mistake, you do something wrong, you start using a lot of strength, you start resisting a lot, and then you get into more trouble. Like now it doesn't work, and the other guy's on top of you, or he's like, he's one step ahead or a couple of steps ahead or 3-4 steps ahead of you, all because you made that one mistake and you try using a lot of strength now. But if you didn't make the strength, if you didn't use strength, you'll start flowing. And when you start flowing, your brain is more sharp. You're more on top of the game. You're more with the tempo of the flow. And then that way, I guess that's how I can relate to the unconscious mind or the cosmic mind, as you say. I guess it's kind of like looking at God in a way too. You kind of like put God in the picture. How would God think? God would think with the cosmic mind. He'd think with the mind of the universe, right? He's unconscious and he's conscious at the same time. So
Yeah.
That's all about I can say.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that take.
I do too. That, like, think about it. Like, God wouldn't doubt himself or herself or their self, right? Like, so I think if you're really trying to tap into that,
there's no reflecting, there's perfect emptiness, but yet there is something moves following its own course. There's like this poem I have at home from the book Tao of Jeet Kune Do, written by Bruce Lee. And there's this poem, and it's a pretty cool poem, and it talks about this, the unconscious mind, being one with yourself and stuff. And it is like, you're not holding on to anything. You're not thinking about the past that just happened. Oh, this guy just got me with this move, or he just tripped me up, he took me down, I escaped, got to my feet. But you're not even thinking about that part. You're just with it, what's happening right now. So your mind is completely empty, and you're with the motion in the ocean. You're with the flow of the go, whatever saying you can come up with. I grab my wrist, I react, you act, he reacts, and you act. You're not just thinking about, oh, this happened and that happened, or you're not worried about the outcome of the battle or the outcome of the goals you're going after. You're not going to be like, oh, what if I don't make it, or what if this doesn't occur? What if I don't get that check? What if I don't get that bonus? Right?
You're no longer at the level of thought. You're just
You're beyond
being.
thought. You're beyond emotions. You're beyond the physical realm.
Right.
I mean, I
Right.
don't know
Right.
how well I can describe it, but it's almost indescribable, really. I think if you can describe it, then there's a limitation there in a way.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's not made of matter. So, I mean, the words we have usually,
So Raj, I wanted to ask, you then, what were some times where you felt you tapped into it? But before you answer, I want to tell a little story of one of yours. So we had all gone to Playland, the P&E, and we were probably in grade 12, and we were all like going on rides and playing some games and so forth. And I remember tying it all into to MJ, because everything is somewhat interconnected and synchronistic. Is then you got an opportunity to go up and sing, and it was it was kind of like a live, whether it was a talent show or just like a live thing, you could do a song, and you sang R. Kelly, "I Believe I Can Fly."
Yeah, I remember
And
that.
I would say in the moment, that's you killed it, right? That's not a hard, that's not an easy song to hit in general, right? That's a hard song for most vocalists to try to hit. R. Kelly, you can say what you want about his personal life, but the man can sing. He's got pipes, he's got vocals.
Yeah.
And it's a passionate song, and you were in that what we call the pocket. You were in you were in that pocket on there. I remember just looking up, hearing that with great pride of like, that's my homeboy just slaying it on
The
the
infinite
mic.
moment.
So that was an infinite moment that I just wanted to share, that maybe wasn't a part of the ones you were going to share now, but I want to just.
I think that is a great example, because to truly let go, the reason that most people don't sound as good as they can is because they're afraid to really belt it out.
Belt it out. Yeah.
They don't know if it's going to go right or wrong. Right?
You're
So,
afraid how you sound, right?
yeah, everyone sounds better in the shower because it's harder to hear you, and plus you got that friendly echo, right? But no, definitely, I would, that is being in the infinite is the singing. Meditating as well. Sometimes I've kind of been in the infinite, but m- the reason that you wouldn't be in the infinite is because now you've had a thought about something, and I would say that the majority of our thought process, the majority of it, and for some people it's not true, more spiritually enlightened, but the majority of it revolves around our identity, or these identities that we've kind of taken on. And it's a factor that can really hold you back. So you're born with unlimited potential. You have no identity, and the very first identity you take on is I'm a son or a daughter, I'm a brother or a sister. There's an identity. Another identity you take on, I am black, I am white, I am Asian, I am Indian. There's another identity you take on. Maybe you come from a working class farming family, or family that works in the police force. There's another identity that's forced on you. So we're born infinite and unlimited. Then all of a sudden we get put into these boxes, and we're trapped inside of all these boxes, and they're the identity. They're dominate a lot of our thought process. And deep down inside that box, there could be a kind of a pretty negative feeling that I don't belong in these boxes. And one may battle that their entire life. But, I guess my question is, how do we deal with the identity when we know that we've taken on these identities that don't really work for us, and truly our path is something else? And it could get later in life, or maybe you discovered early in life, but like how to go through this process where you can kind of strip away some of these false identities to free yourself up so you can enter the infinite dimension, much easier, much smoother. um Machete, what do you think?
How do you deal with all these little identities you picked up from other people?
Yeah.
I'll hold on for a sec. Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No,
My
no
dad. Hold on. That's good. I wouldn't really exactly have a key plan of how to really deal with it, but I do know you got to somehow tackle the issue. Okay, so you're growing up your whole life surrounded by people that are calling you names, or maybe saying you're this and that, or applauding you, saying you're so great at basketball, or you're so great at football, or you're an amazing singer or rapper, or you're really good at soccer. Then you got a group of people just like, treating you like, just like, like they're really, like really your friend, but they're not. You got all sorts of people around you, good, bad, backstabbers, snakes. You got like angels on your side. You got people who act like demons. And all these people, they all have like a view of how you are. So they see you in a certain light, and they shed that. They show those. They show through their behavior of how they think about you, and they'll even speak about it. They'll tell you what they think of you, and you can actually pick up on this over the years and actually believe that this is true. Oh, I'm fat, I'm slow, I'm ugly, I'm not beautiful, or this and that. I'm not smart. Or you can actually think you are smart, you are great. I'm the best. I'm the greatest. And some guy can think he's so great and awesome until he finally realizes he's not that great. Probably could bring great depression. But I think you got to really tackle these issues and just look at it like, if I'm going to identify myself and know my own personalities, I have to first shatter all the other personalities that were projected on me.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that was told to me that I am, I have to like literally just shatter it, like cut through all the ribbons with a knife and just drop it, like empty your mind basically. And then just look at yourself, like, what am I? Without
How do you do that?
How do you do that? You just ask honest questions, like, what do I really like? Who do I really like? Who do I really don't like? What do I don't like to do? There could be things you do that you don't want to do, but you do anyways, and you don't even have to do them. You don't even make money off of them, right?
Yeah.
So I guess you ask yourself questions, like just a bunch of questions, a series of questions, like, what food do I like? What don't I like? Like, do I like going to these places? Do I like doing these things? Do I like just going to the movie all the time with my buddy and just, like, just, I guess you ask yourself a series of questions, honest questions, and you got to be truthful to it. If you're not truthful, then you're probably just going to act like someone else, or act like a version of what someone else thought of you as. Like, someone has an opinion of you and it came true, and
Awesome.
you didn't address the situation.
No, it's a good thorough answer. Dreamcatcher, identities inhibit our ability to enter the infinite dimension. How can we deal with them?
So from inception, we've been taught that life is finite. Whether it was finite to our close circle of family, that's what we think life is. That's what we think the world is just a family, when we know that the world is so much more. But at first, we just know our family. When we go to a school, we meet some friends. Still very finite thinking. We think that these are the only friends we'll ever have. These are the only people in the world. And I think when you grow up in a specific race, you guys are Indian. Indians and Asians are probably the perfect example of races that very much just limit to that what they are. Well, we're Indian, we act this way. You marry that other person who's Indian. You're Oriental or Asian. You should marry that person because they're like that way, and because you guys are such
strong old cultures.
Yeah, strong old cultures. I was thinking that, like, thousands of years, so it's just embedded in it, right? But once again, that's kind of finite because you're thinking about labels. And then as you get into being into high school, you get with groups of friends, and you're thinking once again that, these are going to be all the friends forever, and that's finite in itself. A thing about me is that I'm a mix, and the one thing I wasn't burdened with was ever having to think about being just racially finite. It also made me very much a minority and not feeling a part of any sort of group, which is its own baggage or has its
Yeah.
pitfalls. I never
Yeah.
was welcomed by darker people. I never was always welcomed by lighter people, but because I didn't fit in either way. I was too dark for the white people and I was too light for the dark people, right? So, but
Yeah.
it allowed me to not think in such a box.
Yeah.
And I think more than ever, people get in these boxes. I was actually kind of in a debate with someone on LinkedIn recently he did a really great post about generations, and it was like the generation, um, whatever they are, the millennials versus this, or the generation Z's versus the baby boomers. And I was like, it was clever how you did it. It was like a rap battle between the two. But I'm like, you're kind of limiting yourself. You are thinking very finite. I'm a what you consider to be, I guess, or we're in between people who are born in like 80, 81, but they would say, well, you're kind of on the cusp of not being Generation Y and you're not millennial. I don't want to be labeled in any of those things, right? Because I feel we're so much more than these labels, whether they be
Yeah.
racial labelers. I mean, obviously, in this day and age, people don't want to be labeled even with gender, right? Which
Yeah.
is a whole nother topic in itself. But I think the more we label ourselves, the more we try to fit into this box, we're actually being more finite instead of infinite. And so the best way is to realize, like, this isn't my skin. Look at my skin. It's dead.
Mm-hmm.
The epidermis is dead. It's the skin below the epidermis that is still alive. And it takes the death of the skin, like the death of a lot of our cells, regenerating to come back. And we shouldn't be so attached to a certain thought, whether it be I believe in a certain religion, or I believe there's aliens, or I believe I'm a Republican, or I believe in R. Kelly being guilty. Whatever your belief is, you shouldn't be too tied to it, because it is like the skin. It's going to die in order to make room for it. And so I think the best way to get out of thinking finite is to think like a cloud.
Mm-hmm.
A cloud is formless. It's always moving. It's always changing shape. It can
Mm-hmm.
transform from anything that looks like a unicorn to a buffalo to just a lump of mashed potatoes. It's always changing, and we should be very fluid in how we think about things and not just fall into these labels based on your age, your gender, your race, what kind of job you came from, or where your parents came from. That's what you limit. That's limiting beliefs right there, is because you're allowing your past to dictate your present and therefore influence your future.
Mm-hmm.
No, that was, yeah, no, right on. That was an excellent answer.
A
Excellent.
big one is genes. When someone says it's genetics, that's a huge one. That's an excuse I've heard so many times. Oh,
Absolutely.
it's because of my genetics, down my family tree. This is how it's always been. Like,
No
well,
question.
Can't you break that? Can't you break that?
Absolutely. You can break as Khaleesi
Break
of
the
Lord of the
bad
Ring,
habit
or
of everyone.
Game of Thrones would say, break the wheel. Break
Yeah.
the wheel of, my dad was a diabetic, and his daddy before him, and his granddaddy before him. There's a saying, there's an anecdote that I got
Mentality.
from Zig Ziglar that I think kind of applies
The A
to
to
me.
Z.
So yeah, so Zig Ziglar, if you don't know, he's this great sales professional, one of the greats like Brian Tracy and them. And he says, you can't always just believe what was said before. And he gives a perfect analogy of this. And he says, it was a Thanksgiving dinner. And he asked his wife, he's like, how come you always cut the ends off the ham? And she's like, well, I always cut the ends off the hams because my mother always cut the ends off the ham. He's like, well, let's go into the kitchen and ask her. So they go and they ask the mother, so how come you cut the ends off the ham? And she says, well, I always cut the ends off the ham because my mama always cut the ends off the ham. They said, well, let's just solve this generational mystery right now. They get on the phone, they call the grandmama. Grandmama, why did you always cut the ends off the ham? She says, I always cut the ends off the ham so I could fit into my roaster.
Yeah.
And you see, the point of the story is that people will do things consistently for generations based on what other generations did with no knowledge of why they were doing it in the first place.
They
And
don't
then realizing
question
it, if your roaster's big enough, you shouldn't be cutting off the ends. And I think people need to ask the question of, kind of what Herb was saying, like Machete was on point of like, what do you like? What don't you like? And ask yourself, why are you doing these things? And if you don't like a certain label, change it. You don't like a certain tag, change the tag. Hashtag
Yes.
change the tag.
There you go. There you go. Excellent. Excellent. It's been an awesome podcast so far. Moving into just our final topic here. Just want to talk a little bit about, an important part of spirituality, or something that will ever be linked to spirituality, is just moving on to the topic of religion.
Okay.
And, in the past, religion would have the ultimate control over, you know, all the people.
Mhm.
They would control, um, the laws, what's right and what's wrong, whether you're going to heaven or hell. They would control currency, social order. Religion would dictate wars. Basically, we was like more of like a God controlled
Like
society,
a mind control mechanism.
or in the name of God. And now we've gotten into this more of a society that's obviously politically controlled. um, and now the politics seem to dictate what's lawful and not lawful. Like, it might be a law to execute somebody. It may be the law in your state or province or whatnot to have an abortion. It may be a law in your city to be able to smoke marijuana, or maybe to legalize another drug and get high. So the law tends to dictate what we can and can't do, but it doesn't necessarily tell us if it's morally right or wrong.
Yes.
So, and the same with science or whatnot. Science can tell you that, hey, you can, you know,
Mhm.
um, freeze a man, um, and put him into like kind of a crypto state, and
Mhm.
awake him 100 years later, cryogenics or whatnot. But it doesn't morally tell us if it's right or wrong. So where do we get our morals from now? Do we look to
Oh,
religion to tell us if something's right or wrong? Whether, hey, we should have that abortion or not? Hey, should this criminal be hung? Or do we kind of look to ourselves and kind of let ourselves guide us? Where do we get our kind of morality and ethics from in this 2020?
Mhm.
empathy. You hear the cries and yells of someone suffering, and through an empathetic heart, having compassion, you understand there's something wrong with the situation, then you come up with ways of dealing with it, how to see through right and wrong. I think from pain and suffering, we try to establish right and wrong. Like with rape, we know rape is wrong. Well, I know personally rape is wrong because someone is telling you not to do something to them, but you're doing, and you continue to do it, and they say no, 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 and they're refusing. If they starting to fight you, whatever, you can. It's kind of obvious. Okay, this is wrong. If I'm trying to take money from someone, obviously they're saying no, don't take my money, and they're basically pushing me away, and I keep refusing, and I'm just like, no, I'm going to take this money. You can tell from just the person's reaction that they don't want something done to them, that you don't want done to yourself. It's kind of like being Jesus Christ. Do unto others that you want done unto yourself,
Mhm.
right?
So have you ever looked to religion for guidance?
I personally, I've looked to like the way I feel inside about a situation. Like I have been told about this is wrong from my mom and dad. I've been told this is wrong, this is right. School's teaching you, the teachers, even kids around you and stuff, other adults, they're telling you what's right and wrong. But honestly, I've discovered through experience that what's really right and wrong, that I've realized that's right and wrong, is through how I feel inside. If there's something I did that I don't feel really good about, I can tell inside right away. It's telling me, no, that's not good. But you just wronged that person. You can tell you wronged that person. You should have said those things. It upset them. Like, or you shouldn't have done that. It upset them. Like I can tell from my personal experience of how I feel. That's where I get my real right and wrong from.
Do you ever feel
I
like
don't
God
get
said,
it from I don't get it from the fact that there has to be a higher power, or there has to be something in the sky, or some sort of code written in the air, or something written in the stone that says this is why it's wrong, because you will be punished, or you'll be thrown in the pits of fire in hell for the rest of eternity. I don't believe in something like that to establish what's knowing the difference between right and wrong. To know the difference between right and wrong can't be based from God's anger that he's going to punish you and send you to hell, or you're going to go to heaven if you do some good deed. You should really do a good deed for someone because that person needs help.
Does religion have any function in society right now?
Huh?
Does religion have any function in society right now, in your eyes?
Well, right now you can't go to church or the temple, right? Because
No, just in normal times. Is religion good enough to morally guide you? Does it have a function?
It has people learning. It has people reading books. It has like rabbis and priests. It has people learning the faith of God, like studying religion, and they're surrounding themselves with churches and temples who will help guide people reading books and studying religion. So it's not just here's the Old Testament or here's the Quran, two messed up books that are really hardcore in their views. Just learn it by yourself. You got people there to guide you, like, you know, can tell you the difference between like this is just messed up, what this says over here. We'll show you what it says over here and show you the light of the book, not the dark side of the book. So the person doesn't do messed up stuff, whatever, right? So they got people that are there to keep you in check. So I think we can help because there's people who are going to be lost. Right now, they're going to be asking questions like, is this punishment of God or this and that? Is this a prophecy? So if they study religion, you know, it's there. For some people, it doesn't work. For some, it does. For me, I don't need it. I don't need to go to church or read a religious book or anything about God to think that, to feel comfortable that things are going to be okay. I know things are going to be okay. You know?
Excellent.
We're doing okay. People are going to recover. And I think in time, we'll just have to learn to go about this more safely. And maybe within a year, things will be back to normal with more information and
hopefully we get there. All right, Dreamcatcher. Does religion still have a function in society? Are you guided from within? Have you ever had to consult God?
Machete hit it pretty hard on the head there. I mean, birds of a feather flock together, and Machete and I have lots of fundamental differences of how we think about things, but we have lots that we think about that are similar. And I think looking inside is the jump shot swish that he just nailed. When you are looking outside for anything, whether it be to a religion or some sort of ideology, you've really taken the power from yourself because you're putting it all in the pages of that Quran, that Bible, that 3 baskets of wisdom, or any of those religious books. And you have to look within. And I read books all the time and then still fall from grace, as I did today, and forget my teachings and get mad or short or ramped up. And we should always be checking ourselves. The great thing about religion and the idea about God is if you think and you believe that there is someone watching you all the time, you'll probably be on your best behavior. You probably will treat people a lot better. You probably treat yourself a lot better. You'll probably be better with your time. And the one great thing about religion is it does bring people together, like-minded people. And when people are sharing in positive virtues, it does have lots of great qualities that provide to that.
That's a big plus.
However, when you just rely on that to get you through, you then can use that as a crutch. And then you need Austin 3:16 in order to survive. You become dependent on these psalms and scriptures and pages when it was all within you. All religion is really doing, and all those religious books and archetypes is just teaching you what you already know.
Does everyone need a little bit of it?
We do. And however you find it. My father, I think we talked about it a little bit on the last episode. that there are a million ways up the mountain, or in this case, there are infinite ways up the mountain. You're Jehovah Witness, you're a Hindu, you're Sikh, you're Scientologist, you're Christian, you're Catholic, Protestant, you're Buddhist. You all have ways up the mountain. And if you need to read that book as you go up the mountain, more power to you. But if you start to go up that mountain and you want to then discuss why I shouldn't have my book or my belief as I go up the mountain, this is where the real fallacy of religion comes into play, because it's this bias. And there's light biases like wanting people to be like you, of like, oh, hey, I went for a run today. You should try doing the run. You know, it's good cardio. Yeah. You know, we all want people to assimilate like ourselves. Whether we will acknowledge it or not, we do. We want people to be like us, at least a little bit. And with subtleness, it's all right. Hey, I got a new workout. Try this out. Or, hey, I read a good book. You should listen to it. Hey, there's this new song on Spotify. You should check it out. Those things are all right. And I think even, hey, you know, there's this is religion that I've been practicing, and you should look into it. It could be great for you. I think it's all right to make the suggestion, but I don't think it's all right to push it down. So does religion have a place in society? Yes, it does. And for the people who need it, great. Grab hold of that as long as it's that positive vibe that you're looking for. But I think Machete said it best, of that you then still always have to go within. Keep those teachings and then utilize that in conjunction with the strength from within.
Awesome response. Yeah. My personal take on it would be,
please.
I think, it's good to have a little bit of religion in there. Good to know multiple religions.
Yeah. I agree. The more, the better.
What about mixing up the religions, like Bruce Lee? Mixing up the martial arts together, mix up the religions together.
Exactly. I say don't be biased to a religion. Try them all. You know what I mean? Try all the different flavors out there, and you'll notice that all of them are rooted in spirituality. And a lot of religions have commonalities. For instance, in spiritual, in the yogic view and in the Hindu view, the universe was created through sound or a hum or the cosmic om. And when you look in the Bible, I believe it says in the beginning there was
the word.
God, and the word was with God. It was a word. It was a sound that started creation. And that links up to the fact that in kind of the Hindu scripts, it was Om that created the universe. And even now in the scientific view of things, they're looking at something like the string theory, where different vibrations are creating the cosmos. And even us human beings, the atom vibrates, and there's no really known cause of it. So vibration is everywhere. And even to go even a little further in, the Hindu religion, they will chant Om, right? And you go to a church, what do they say? Amen. Amen. And in the Vatican, I believe, in the synagogue, they say man. So it says Om, man, man. They're all relatively the same sound. So all religions have commonalities, some of them stronger than others. But should you have a little bit of religion in your life? Absolutely. But I think all religions, teach that there is a creator. And if you really get in touch with yourself, you'll know the creator is inside you, the infinite wisdom is inside you. And ultimately, you should always be guided by yourself, because you want to be true to yourself. And the moment you go against yourself, now what you've really done is you've just gone and punched your soul right in the gut, and you've damaged your own soul. So if for no other reason, be guided from within so you don't go against yourself.
So you don't eat what others have taught you.
Yeah. And that's the spiritual process, looking from within. Yeah. So pretty much we've got to the hour mark here. I think that was a pretty awesome podcast. Hope that
thank you for having us. And
thanks,
it was great great exploring a little bit, deeper into the infinite and some of the topics. And there's infinite things to talk about in terms of the infinite. And I look forward to get into some new topics on the next episode.
Dan, when's the
Definitely.
last time I hung out with you, man? It's